On this episode, we're going to talk about self-worth and the difference between a natural-born hustler and a natural-born entrepreneur. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Real Talk. I'm your host, Carlos Gill. This is my all-new series in which I answer your questions on social media marketing and interview interesting guests in the world of business. And one of those guests that's joining me here in the studio today is Audrey Bellis. Audrey is a rock star. We've known each other now for several years, and today she's going to share with you her journey of discovering her self-worth and how that led to her starting an amazing set of businesses. So with that, Audrey, welcome to Real Talk.
Thank you, Carlos. It's a pleasure to be here.
It is great to have you here with me today. So for those viewers that aren't familiar with you and your story, why don't you go ahead and tell them a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So I am the founder of Startup DTLA. We work with Mayor Garcetti's office to help bring tech and creative companies into downtown. And I'm also the founder of Worthy Women, which is the movement for women who play big in the world, and founded quite personally on my own experiences.
Let's talk a little bit about those experiences. So again, you and I go way back. We met through social media in 2014.
Yeah.
Over Twitter. So for those out there that think, you know, social media isn't really a spot where you can meet cool people, that's where we met. We've developed this friendship throughout the years, and I've seen your journey. And one of the things that you talk about, we're going to talk about here in this episode, is self-worth. At what point did you discover that working a corporate job wasn't for you and you wanted to branch out on your own?
I think I knew that very early. Corporate life was not going to be for me. When I was a little girl, I think I was in kindergarten, and my teacher asked me what I wanted to be, and I said I wanted to be the dictator of my own country. And they very promptly called my parents in for a meeting, right, to sit down and be like, your child has some ego issues. But very early on, I recognized that I had leadership skills. Kids on the playground always listened to me. I was always in charge, and I was a take charge kind of person. As I got older, I was never bound by this idea of things are not possible for me. Everything is possible for me if I want to create it and I can go out and get it. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that I'm a first generation child. I have immigrant parents. So for me, it was knowing that my mom came to this country with nothing, didn't know how to speak the language, limited resources. My grandma came here with 6 kids as a widow. And they found a way to make something of themselves, right? So I sit here and I go, me with all these opportunities that my parents have sacrificed and given to me, I have no excuse to not make something of myself. And in today's world, the barrier to entry is so low. Like you said, we met on Twitter. I know plenty of people who are making tons of money through relationships that they've met on Twitter. And in fact, 100% of my business is sourced, if not through referral, from Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat alone.
And I see you hustling. I see you hustling on the IG. Hustling on the Twitters, constantly promoting your events for Startup DTLA as well as Worthy Women, which we're going to talk about here quite a bit on this episode. But let's go ahead and focus on something, which is hustle and entrepreneurship. And I consider you a natural-born hustler because, again, I've seen your evolution from where you were at a startup a few years ago when we met to the startups that now you've created. Heck, you just had Amber Rose keynoting Worthy Women's inaugural conference. How amazing is that? But you and I do have this belief that there's a difference between being an entrepreneur and being a hustler. And these are very much, they become buzzwords in our culture now. You see a lot of folks that are constantly out there talking about their hustle. I'm just as guilty because I do it all the time. And then you have a lot of startup founders that are talking about being an entrepreneur. Tell our viewers, what's the difference from your perspective of both?
Okay, so you have to think of connotation, right? I grew up in the 90s during the gang years, and for me, growing up and calling yourself a hustler meant a little bit of, trying to make $1 out of 15 cents. It was not a thing that you wanted to call yourself with pride. Being an entrepreneur is something that people call themselves with pride, but here's the difference. I hear a lot of people call themselves entrepreneurs. They go, I got a domain, I got a website, I maybe filed some paperwork, I'm an entrepreneur. Are you really? What are you actually doing with it? When I think of hustle, I think of a lifestyle. I think of somebody who goes, I'm gonna go out and make that today. Today I think of salespeople. Today I start with zero, and every day I'm gonna close with something. And that's my mentality when I wake up in the morning. I wake up not assuming that things are given to me or that they're set, but that I'm gonna wake up and make something. I'm gonna make a new contact, I'm gonna close a deal, I'm gonna go out and meet somebody, I'm going to get discovered, I'm gonna put out amazing things in the world that other people will sit and resonate with and say, you know what? Me too. And in both of my businesses, both Startup DTLA and Worthy Women, the premise at the core of them is community. How do we remove barriers that you face so that you can be a part of a community where you thrive, right? Not just existing.
Would you say then that hustle is more of a trait that you can develop over time, or is it something that instinctively you're born with?
That's a good question. I think it's both. I think many people have a natural born curiosity that manifests itself as a hustle, right? They come out, they go, they do, they're schmoozy. But I also think it is born out of necessity. And you oftentimes find that in people when they hit their bottom, right? They hit the bottom and they go, man, it just can't continue to be this way. It's gotta be better. I'm gonna go out and do something. I'm gonna change my situation. And for me personally, yes, I was always a hustler, but you know, I had gotten to a place where I had lost my self-worth. I didn't feel so worthy. When we met, I was working at a startup for no pay.
Interesting.
I had an e-commerce business that I was fortunate to make an exit from, and I was looking for my next gig, and I hadn't quite found it, and I was feeling burnt out and frustrated, and this startup reaches out to me, and they said, hey, we've seen one of your articles on Huffington Post. We think you're a natural-born leader. We have a marketing position open, and we're a tech startup company. And I said, what do I know about startups? And they said, you had an e-commerce company. What do you think that is? And I never thought of it in those terms. I always just thought of it as, I'm a small business owner. I'm just trying to get bills paid. I'm trying to pay people. I'm trying to, you know, move inventory. And they offered me this position as their VP of marketing. And they said, well, we're raising a round, so we don't have any money for you. But when
so
we
this
get
was for no pay.
This was for no pay.
VP of marketing for no pay.
No pay. And they said, you know, you should join our team. Money is coming. I heard a lot of money is coming. I used to call it the monopoly money, right? It was never there. I had
Funny
stocks.
money.
I had stocks in something that was never going to vest.
Right.
And I sit here and I go, you know, okay, but I needed that experience. I was struggling to find myself and carve out this sense of who am I in the world? How am I of service to the world, and what do I bring to the table? And the best thing that happened to me there was, one, it forced me into hustling and getting stuff done. If I wasn't gonna receive a paycheck from there, I had to receive it in other places and freelance services. But
which is hustle. It
is hustle, but what I really learned from working at that company was social media. Because I worked remotely. They were in New Jersey, I was in LA. I was sitting at home, so I got out and started working from a co-working space, and I got on Twitter chats. And I started meeting people and developing friendships and cultivating business with large people. And then I went back to the company and said, hey, you should put me in sales because I'm bringing case studies to the table. And in fact, so what if you can't pay me a salary? How about you pay me commission on all the deals I bring in with no cap?
So you literally just touched on every basic principle if you want to up your game. And double down on the work and take your game to the next level. One of the things that you said that stood out is experience. And oftentimes I have youngsters that will reach out to me. When I say youngsters, I'm talking about, you know, folks in their early 20s. They're either in college and trying to develop a side hustle, a business of some sort, or they're just trying to find their way in the world. And I always share my own personal story, which is very similar to yours, of you have to get the experience somehow, even if you're not getting paid up front. So let's talk a little bit more about this. Would you say that experience is worth more than money?
Yes, to a point.
Okay.
You need to determine an end date. Say, I will freelance, or I will intern, I will work for free for X amount of time. At which point I'm then gonna be, and during this free amount of time, you should be taking on clients and say, you know what, how about we do a swap here? Because you're still bringing value to the table. It may not be the perfect end goal or a perfect polished product, but you're still bringing value to somebody who needs it. So your job is to be a matchmaker. So you find somebody who needs this and maybe they can't afford to pay you and say, you know what, how about we swap this? I'm gonna do this at no charge for you, and you're gonna let me use your logo as a client. And ideally, the type of client that you can leverage or parlay into something bigger, right? They're in the right market of what you're trying to go to. But give yourself an end date. If you just work for an undetermined amount of time, you don't consider yourself worthy of charging people. So you have to leverage that up. I call it bridging small right actions, right? So you work for free for a short amount of time. Then you work for low pay or a flat rate. And you say, okay, I'm gonna bring on X amount of clients at this rate, and I'm gonna build myself until, you know, maybe it's $1,000 a client. Maybe take on people at $500, bridge it up to $1,000, then $2,500, and then you start to go for what you consider to be the big dogs. And you say, you know what, I'm here, I've made it. Here is my experience, right?
Absolutely.
I think the biggest problem people fall into is they work for free for an undetermined amount of time and they don't know when to stop because they don't know if they're worth charging. And then they do the big jump and charge big numbers and they don't feel confident.
Right.
When you don't feel like you are worthy of something, you will never get it. And I see this with salespeople all the time, right? They go from nothing to, oh my gosh, I'm gonna submit a $10,000 bid. What will they say? You know what, I should lower my dollar amount. I should bring this down. I should give them more deliverables to make them feel like they're getting more value. The person who Simon Sinek says this, the person who determines the value is not the person setting the price, it's the one who pays for it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm glad that you brought up Simon Sinek. And by the way, for you viewers out there, make sure if you're watching this here on YouTube that you do check out my Simon Sinek Millennials in the Workplace response. I just want to go ahead and plug that in there since you brought up Simon.
So, and we're millennials.
Yeah, and we're millennials. So there's some really good points there. I'm going to just go ahead and kind of try to pick apart what stood out to me. You talk a lot about playing big versus playing small. And I know I've gone through this on my climb when I had my own startup, and I even face this now when someone reaches out to book me for a speaking engagement. Oftentimes, you struggle with, well, should I charge too little? Should I charge too much? What's in between? You know, there's a lot of folks out there that are watching this right now that are probably facing this same dilemma. They have a little bit of experience in social media, for example, or in marketing or in sales, and they want to be able to do some consulting and make some extra money, or they want to develop this into something. So where's that balance? And talk about, you know, your perspective on playing big versus small.
Okay, so we believe, and we teach this through Worthy Women, but this is my life philosophy, right? Everything you do in the world stems from a place of how worthy you feel. When you feel worthy of something, you go out, you get it, you feel like you're of service to the world and what you bring to the table has value. So you're confident in the price you're charging because you know that you're creating something that's of service to the end user and you're doing good by your eyes, right? When you don't feel that you're worthy of something, you shrink. And what you do is you make your outside factors the reason and as to why you're playing small. So for example, you blame somebody else's fault. They don't recognize my value. Oh, they don't have a budget. Everybody just wants something for free. It's somebody else's fault. It's not your fault. You blame, you drink too much, you engage in behaviors that are not your fault, you distract yourself and say, oh, I just don't have enough time, I don't have enough. It's always not enough of something else and somebody else has created that circumstance, right? You're looking to offload it so you can justify to yourself why you're so worthy and they just didn't recognize your value, rather than coming to the table and saying, you know what, I just don't feel enough. That's the core principle of it. And there's ways to overcome that, right? So you talked about booking speaking engagements. I'm represented by management now. So I get booked to speak for a lot of things. Sometimes I'll book things directly, but for the most part, I refer everything to my manager. But when it came to determining what my fees were and my expenses and what the rider was gonna be set at, I put together a media kit. I asked for advice from people that I know who are getting paid to speak, and I said, I've spoken for X amount of time, I've done this many events for free, I've now gotten paid for several events, and I remember my very first event that I got paid for, and they said, well, what's your day rate? And I said, I don't know, $2,500, and they go, great, when can you do this? And I go, shoot, I didn't charge enough, number one, and oh my God, you're willing to pay me for something
There was too easy a bite.
Well, not just that, it was this reality for me that somebody was willing to pay me for something I would have gladly done for free because I loved the organization and I was moved by their mission and I felt that I had something to bring to the table. So when I put together this media kit, I put in those factors. Here are my accolades. Here are what people say at conferences. Here are live tweets that you can connect to and click through and actually see in real time. Here are the hashtags from these events, and I compile a report of them, my social engagement, what my reach is, and what HR managers, when we work with diversity and inclusion programs, say when they've had me come and speak and why they've brought me back and why they've put me on retainer. And that way, when I send those things out into the world, I feel more confident because I know I'm of service. And here's the other final point I'm going to make on that. People, when they get turned down, sit there and go, oh, maybe it was me, maybe it was my pricing. It never is about you. I mean, it's always only ever about you, but when somebody says no to you, that's just not your market. It usually has nothing to do with you. And most people get hung up on that, so they start making adjustments everywhere that they think might make a difference. The reality
they start self-guessing themselves.
Absolutely. They self-doubt, second guess, they wonder what they did wrong. And the reality is it's probably just not your end user. You need to find your tribe. When you resonate and you create resonance with somebody, you will have no problem closing them because they know that they are you and you are them. It is a oneness. And that's what people are always only ever seeking.
Well, I think this goes back to experience. I want to go ahead and bring up experience again. Whether you're an entrepreneur out there starting up your own company, whether you have a side hustle that you're looking to develop, or whether you just wake up every morning and you want to rule the world and that is your hustle that keeps you going. Experience is the name of the game. People pay up for experience. And I always use this as an example. When I was in my mid-20s and I was running my company Jobs Direct USA and I was making no money, one day I had a company that reached out and said, we have a in-store job fair that we want to promote. How much is it going to cost for us to do this? And I literally I didn't know how much to charge. I had no number to throw at them. And I literally said, pay me $250.
There you go.
That $250 little gig is what's actually gotten me to have the career I have today, because that company eventually ended up hiring me to go run social media for them. After that 250 gig started morphing into a bigger contract, a bigger project, then was, hey, we want to hire you full time. That experience led to another job, which led to another job, which has taken me essentially to where I'm at today. So experience, I think, is priceless.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have a price tag tied to it. And I know a lot of folks out there are eager to be the CEO of their own company, but oftentimes they don't have the experience or the chops to really back it up.
It's interesting. Okay, so I think of my own entrepreneurial journey as you're talking about that. And you're right, experience has led me here. So I had an e-commerce boutique that I started after a broken engagement because I needed to get out of a significant amount of debt. Built that business, worked really hard, cut my teeth into the world. Finally, I was ready to be done with it, and I thankfully was. I moved on to the startup company, right? That wasn't paying me, but I was gaining a lot of real-time hands-on experience with nobody teaching me. It was just this idea of, here's your goal, go figure it out. So I did a lot of Googling, and here's what I really did, a lot of personal development. I dug deep into myself, and I became a sponge. I wanted to learn everything from everywhere. I became very childlike in my approach, and I was very naive and very open about the fact that I knew nothing, so I'm willing to learn everything. That helped me bridge. I got involved, as I mentioned, with co-working. Downtown LA had its very first co-working space at the time, and I was a member there. And I approached the owners and said, nobody even knows you're here. How about I help you develop community and development and book events? And selfishly, I just wanted to network my way into my next gig. But what happened was I got hands-on with the community. And again, from my own personal learned experiences, I found out what other people were doing. And then I started to notice trends. I noticed people would outgrow our co-working space and they would leave downtown. And I go, why would you leave downtown LA? We're the second largest capital in the United States, the second largest civic presence outside of Washington, D.C. We are the largest fashion hub. In fact, downtown LA has 300,000 garment workers, which is more than Paris, New York, and Milan combined. Yet no one thinks of us as a fashion tech hub, right? And I go, there are so many natural things. This is just bad marketing. It's bad branding. We are literally a full stack city. How am I going to change this? So I got together with a group of fellow people that were living and working in the neighborhood, and we started Grid 110, which is a nonprofit fashion tech accelerator with the mayor's office. And we said, okay, we're going to rebrand fashion tech for downtown to show how this is a city that is evolving and why you should be here. So I got into what I call accidental economic development. And then after a year of that, I went, and I was still building co-working spaces and I was working with clients. I went back to the mayor's office and I said, okay, we're building one vertical, but the problem is the city. We don't have a centralized community the way San Francisco does, the way Silicon Valley does, the way Silicon Beach, Santa Monica does. We need to centralize this. Why aren't we doing this? And I got so tired of asking, why aren't we doing this? And finally they said, well, why don't you do it? And I said, I will. So will you back me? Will you endorse me? And they said yes. So I started Startup DTLA. And we started curating events for the community. And then, again, through my own natural lived experiences and what we're creating and putting out in the world, we were testing content. And a woman approached me and she said, I want to see events for female founders. I'm tired of going to events with all men and white men. I don't see founders that look like me. I'm a Latina. I didn't come from money. I couldn't I had to bootstrap. I couldn't go raise money. I didn't have that experience under my belt. I want to see content for somebody that looks like me that's making it in the world. And I said, all right, let's do a test pilot. So we started Worthy Women. We did 7 events in 10 weeks, and we explored different pillars of content. And it went viral with no marketing or advertising, just word of mouth. People came, and they came out in droves. We couldn't find venues to hold us anymore. So that was 2015. 2016, we said, all right, we're going to do 1 event per month. Our audiences tap out of over 175 women just in downtown LA alone, right? And we explore 4 pillars of content where people have shame and they don't feel worthy. Leadership, finance, career advancement, and entrepreneurship, right? What are the areas where you don't feel enough or you feel uncomfortable around? Those did amazing, and then we did our conference, our 3-day conference, where we honored 100 women who live and lead in integrity, the 100 Women of Worth. The second day was a conference with an after party, and the third day was a brunch and learn with Amber Rose. And here's what I love about Amber Rose. She doesn't care what you think about her. To be an entrepreneur, you can't care what other people think about you. It is your job to go out into the world and create something of value from your perspective, right? You also need people that are going to receive that, but it needs to be from your perspective. And Amber Rose, well, people thought that was controversial. She is truly one of the best examples of a female entrepreneur who did what she could with what she had. And that's what I tell people. Do what you can with what you have, where you're at. And if you do those things, and you do just a little bit more, you will always have a little bit more, right? How do you leverage yourself up? How do you parlay? Like yourself and like me. You take one experience, you build on it, you get a little bigger, you get a little bigger. You are bridging small right actions together to get to the end goal.
Yeah, absolutely. No job lasts forever.
Nope.
No experience lasts forever. This is a constant journey, it's an evolution that we're all on. So I want to go ahead and build on what Audrey said. First of all, I'm sitting next to the future mayor of LA right now. There's no doubt or question in my mind because you're doing so much to give back to the community. And what I love is that you're giving back to these pockets, being startup founders, entrepreneurs, women. You're really tapping into diversity.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because we're sitting here in the studio right now. Our 45th president of the United States is being inaugurated literally while we're having this conversation. Yeah. And you and I are two Hispanic professionals sitting in the tech capital of the world here in Silicon Valley, in San Francisco. Yeah. So let's talk about how important it is to provide resources to train this demographic, which from my perspective, being a Latino millennial that grew up in South Florida, didn't grow up thinking about creating a website, or apps didn't exist back then, but creating a website or creating a business. It was always this dream of, well, my parents own a business, so I'll just inherit their business, or I'll follow in their footsteps, and whatever they've done to get them to this point, I'll just kind of swoop in afterward.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting that you touch on the presidency, and I am a proud Republican. I grew up conservative, I'm Catholic, and I think of my Republican ideals, and I think of small business as the backbone of America, right? And that when government's out of your way and you have resources and the economy supports you, you can go out and build what you need to build, and you are responsible for your own legacy, right? And not just as a Republican point of view, that's just the Democratic dream, right? You come in and you're given a land of options and you can do what you want with it. It is your oyster to create. And after the election, we had just, in fact, election day was 2 days after our Worthy Women conference. So we came off this high, like we did it, we did amazing things. We had 350 people across 3 days. We have made it in the world. And then the election happened, and I turned to my VP of operations, her name's Yvette Montoya, and after the election, she looked at me in tears and she said, Audrey, I didn't know people hate us so much as women, as Latinas, as people just trying to carve their way in the world. And I turned to her and I said, we're gonna issue a statement for 2017. Worthy Women is committed to free events across the country. We are no longer just in LA. This year we're going to 6 cities in 8 months, and San Francisco is one of them in March. We believe that we need to remove barriers, and women face enough barriers. Access to peer mentorship and resources should not be one that you face. We are a community, not a clique. We don't hide behind a paywall. We will find our money other places, and we do. We get paid through corporate companies to do diversity and inclusion training. We work with their women of groups, and we do a program called Worthy Leadership, right? For executives who want to level up and to empower their teams and to connect better with their teams and build empathy. And so for Worthy Women, we said we're going to take this, instead of just doing panels once a month, we're going to do free single-day conferences in these cities. And we are going to invite women. And not only do we circulate our content around the 4 pillars that I mentioned before, career advancement, entrepreneurship, finance, and leadership, we also are curating content specifically in these cities of what are the barriers women face and how have local business women overcome them. Because the barriers you face here as a woman and a woman of color, our audience is over 70% Latina and African American. Women who are statistically most likely to be single mothers, right? Statistically. In fact, Black women account for 1% of venture capital in all of California. They call them the Black unicorns. Are you kidding me? That is a joke. Women-led businesses usually tend to be more profitable, right? Many studies have shown that. So we said, all right, we're going to take this to the cities. So we're going to San Francisco, LA, Philly, Chicago, Miami, and New York. And we're doing New York twice. 6 cities, 8 months, and we're bringing things to the table. Because the things you face in Chicago are not the same things you faced in Philly. And here's what's interesting. Of all of our cities, 5 of them are shown through various studies to be cities that are up and coming for entrepreneurs, and especially people of color, small business owners, except for Philly. Philly is in fact rated much lower than them as one of the cities that's even on the decline for that. All the more reason why we need to go into those cities, because there are barriers there and we need to highlight the people who are breaking through them. It's not just about giving people resources, it's about letting people know that they have a choice and that they can choose to change their situation. You didn't like the outcome of the election? Is protesting gonna make a difference in the streets? Maybe, but you know what makes a bigger difference? You taking charge and empowering people around you. So how can we help you do that?
I love it, I love it. So talk to us about the format of the Worthy Women events that you're taking across the country to these 6 cities over 7 months.
Absolutely. So each event is a single-day city summit. We have an opening keynote speaker. We do a series of fireside chats, panels, while simultaneously having workshops that are happening, and we close with an after party. The other thing that we have done is we have partnered with other groups that are also doing activist things. So for example, Angel Hack has a series called Lady Problems. And Lady Problems is a series of hackathons that happens all over the world, not just here in the United States, but we've partnered with them in our local cities that we're going to be activating events in. And their hackathons happen right after ours, and you don't have to be a techie to go participate in their hackathon. And what they do is they say, okay, we're going to do a hackathon weekend, and it's open to men and women just as Worthy Women is. Here are the problems that women face. How do we use technology to break down those barriers and get women the things that they need, right? So you're solving lady problems. I was actually a judge at the Red Bull event in Santa Monica for their last hackathon. And one of the winning apps was actually, and this was an app, that enabled women to find out where they could get an abortion in their states. And here's the interesting thing about it. I don't care whether you're pro-life or pro-choice or you're pro-abortion, it doesn't matter. The fact is that there are inconsistencies in all the states because they all have different laws and some of them are very antiquated. And as a woman wanting to know what your options are, this app allows you to enter where you're at. What are the laws affected by you? Do you need to see a judge? Is this something you can freely do? What are the centers around you that you're able to do that? And it empowers you with information for you to make your own choices, right? It's not hidden and arbitrary and hard to find. And truly, that's typically what we need in most situations. People need access to information that's been filtered down, not just a million Google results, but something that's been filtered down and relevant to your specific needs so that you can make informed choices.
So with the Worthy Women events, are you looking to attract women that are looking to start up a business? Are you looking to attract women, of all niches, if you will, that they're employed, they're maybe looking for a better job, they're maybe looking for some confidence? Is this going to help them potentially in their relationships?
Oh, absolutely.
With, say, their spouse or significant other?
Absolutely. So let me answer the first part of that. And the answer is all of it. Our audience breaks down into a couple of categories. They're freelancers, right, that are maybe employed somewhere else and they're loving their craft and they just want to level up and get more resources. And again, typically they're bridging to community. So it's freelancers, entrepreneurs and small business owners, and sometimes big business owners, right? Women and men, we have about 9% of men, and that's growing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So men come to the Worthy Women events.
Yes. Hold that thought, and I'm going to tell you why men come to our events.
Okay.
People that are already working 9-to-5 jobs and they love their career, but they're looking to level up. So they're looking for career advancement. And then the final category are people who want to transition. They love what they do, but they want to start a business. They're looking for resources. They're looking to bridge these gaps. And truly what all people are looking for is community. So with Worthy Women, there's a couple of interesting things that happen. You cannot use the word worthy without wondering if it applies to you. Are you a worthy person? Do you do worthy things? Are you a woman of worth? The second thing is, no one can ever tell you about a time when they are worthy until they've told you about a time when they are not. And that is a universal experience.
I was going to ask you that question.
Oh, am I a worthy person?
I was actually going to throw that to you as a curveball, but since you just brought it up, when was a point in your journey that you questioned if you were worthy?
I've always questioned how worthy I was. And I can see that looking back at my behaviors of how I hustled to get other people to believe I was worthy by having perfect grades, having a perfect body, the perfect job, all the things that I thought were expected of me. And guess what? Those all blew up in my face, right? And I had to sit here and go, for a smart girl, how did I get in this position? And what I realized was I compromised my integrity to make other people happy and not myself. That's when I realized I am unworthy. I need to be worthy. And the only way to be worthy is to truly believe that and to dig deeper in myself. I use the hashtag dirty to worthy all the time, right? Because that was my journey. And nobody's ever just worthy. You have to recognize that in yourself.
One of the things that I see a lot also being said is no F's given, and I love it.
Can I use the word here?
No, not on the show. That's why I said F purposely.
Got it.
But no F's given.
Yeah.
And I love it because we're in a generation right now, I think we see this on our end, where you make a move and there's always gonna be people coming out of the woodwork and they're gonna be criticizing that. They're gonna be, we call them haters, I call them silent fans. So you have these people that come out of the woodwork and are constantly giving you their opinion without any substance. I value, for one, I value perspective over opinion. If you give me your perspective and you're backing it up, I'll hear you out any day, but just an opinion I see as having very little value. So I love the no F's given mentality. It's very hard for me not to say it.
Yeah.
I love that mindset because when you operate this mindset of I'm worthy for the opportunities that I'm chasing, I'm worthy for this job that I'm interviewing for, I'm worthy for this client that I'm trying to get to sign an agreement with.
Let me interrupt you for a second in the language here. It's not that you're worthy to receive that. It's you are a person who is worthy of basic things: to be loved, to be seen, to be heard, and to feel like what you say matters. That's what we're only seeking. You're not seeking the end job. You're seeking to feel worthy of having your basic needs met. It comes down to safety. It truly comes down to how safe do you feel in the world, and worthy, again, of being seen, of being heard, and of feeling like what you say matters. We are only always ever seeking love and belonging.
So let me ask you this question now. Let's fast forward to today, where you are successful. Do you still at any point question your worth?
Every day.
Okay.
Every day.
Tell us more about it.
I don't think that, here's what's interesting. When I started Worthy Women, the things that bonded me to my audience are the same things that divide me from them today. So in the beginning, and again, we get very personal. So our panel topics are things like how to build a business that's an extension of your personality. If you ask me what I do, I'll tell you that. My business is an extension of my personality. I get up every day and get paid to be Audrey Bellis. And that is a joy. People want to seek that. They want experiences like that where they feel happy. So our early topics are the same things that bonded me to our audience. My own struggles in my fertility, in my romantic relationships, in my relationships with my parents and being seen, with my peers, as a leader, in my business. Am I doing the right things? Do I deserve to get paid for this? Is this a value, and will somebody actually pay me to do this? All of those things, right? But here's what happens as our audiences have evolved. They look at me and say, well, you must be so worthy now and figured it out for you to sit on this stage and tell me about these things every day. Right? There's an assumption and almost like a pedestaling effect. It's like, oh, well, if Audrey's talking about it, she must have learned it, therefore she's now so worthy. And me being vulnerable is a big thing. You see me on social media. I don't hold back.
You do not hold back
I don't
at
sit
all.
here and tell you that I'm having great days every day and that my life is filtered and pink and pretty. No. If I'm having a bad day, you see it on Instagram. We joke that my hashtag en la noche is for when I've been drinking too much and I'm out at night going, oh, my feels are in the
en la noche
are in the bar
on Instagram with the cigar and the drink.
And typically that's sad hour, not happy hour, right? So I'm very transparent in that. And I've had people tell me, in fact, I sat with a woman after our conference who said, Audrey, I look up to you. I've come to so many of your events. I want you to be my mentor. I'd like to sit down with you. And I said, I'd love to sit down with you too. So we sat down, had coffee, and something had happened that day where I was very transparent about, kind of where I was at and what I'm going through. And her response was, I liked you so much more before you said that. I need to see you as this person who can do no wrong, because it makes me feel like I'm aspiring to something, and you just made me feel like you're very human. And she didn't like that. She was unhappy with that.
Same thing, girl.
I mean, how many times have you looked up to somebody or something or an organization? I have a client like this, no longer my client. Oh my gosh, I thought when I got this client, I was gonna have made it in the world. They were the big kahuna in town. They were like the company that I would have died to have a job with. And then when I landed them as a client, my world, I had made it, I was on cloud 9. And then I got to see behind the scenes of what it was like at the company, and my heart literally broke. It literally felt like I was let down. So I could understand her experience. Now, it is so important for me to be, again, not just relatable, but to be transparent with my audience and show them, no, I'm not perfect, right? And when you talk about people giving you opinions, you know, it's twofold. Yes, it is them, what they're imposing on you, but two, it's how you choose to receive it. Right? So if somebody is giving me honest feedback of something that happened or transpired, of something that they didn't like, my job as an entrepreneur is to look at my data and say, is this supported? Is this feedback that actually shows up in other places, and maybe I didn't like to hear it and it bruised my ego, but is it valid? And I think as our job, or as entrepreneurs, it is our job to disseminate the difference between the two, because regardless, people aren't going to always have opinions, and it's impossible to say, "Oh, don't let it get to you," because it does, right? We're only human.
We are human. You know, I know that I put a lot of content out there, personal content.
Yes.
And I'll take selfies of me getting a fresh haircut, not for my followers, but for myself, because I feel good. It makes me feel good doing about it.
Yeah.
But there's so many times where, even if it's not a haircut selfie, whatever it might be me Snapchatting, I'm out having some drinks with some friends.
Yeah.
I'll have that one person that reaches out, whether it's through DM on Snap or on Messenger, and say, I don't think that you should do this. And the more that people say, I don't think you should do this, it really starts to question yourself. Because you start to second guess the moves that you make. You're thinking, I'm doing everything the right way, I'm being myself. I hear people like Audrey and Carlos and Simon Sinek and all these people talking about being themselves. But when I try to be myself, society wants me to be a certain way.
Okay. If you're feeling that way, though, is it because society wants you to be that way, or you're still trying to conform to be accepted by them, right? And that's ultimately the question that all people face. We all want to be authentic to ourselves, but we only want to be authentic if we're being accepted.
Ooh, that's real talk.
Yeah.
That's real talk.
Yeah.
I use this as an analogy all the time. And I think our journey and maturation process takes a while. I don't have everything figured out at 33.
Nobody does.
No one has everything figured out.
Nobody ever does.
But the way that I start to look at this is, and you've spoken at many stages as well, so I look at it like this. When I'm speaking and doing a keynote at an event, there will be, at some point in that keynote, because I see this as a speaker, someone that gets up from their seat and they leave.
Yes.
And that's the person that at that moment in time doesn't like the message I'm giving them, so they're moving on.
Or they went to the bathroom, but yes.
Or they went to the bathroom.
But in our heads, it is 100% always,
We're thinking,
oh God,
why
they
are
don't
they
like
getting
it.
up? You have literally 1,000 people in front of you, but
Yeah.
you see that one person get up and go into the aisle, and you're like, oh my God, am I saying the wrong thing?
Yeah.
Is my tone off? You know, should I slow it down?
Right.
You know, you start to question yourself in that moment.
Absolutely.
Imagine social media at scale. That's what that is.
Yeah.
And when I go back to saying opinions versus perspective, when you have folks that come up to you at the end of the session and they're saying how amazing you are and they're telling you what they like about the session, because I always ask, what do you think?
Right.
And I like to hear what are the points I really touched on that
How do
people
you
walked
resonate?
away
Yes.
people walked away getting value from. That's again balancing opinion versus perspective. Because
Yes.
it's one thing to say, oh, you had a great session. Okay, great. Well, what do you like about it?
Yeah.
And oh, I like that you said this, that, and the other. Okay, that's your perspective.
Yes.
So that helps me improve my game.
Yeah.
And I think this is where you have to start looking at social media and real life for what they are. Social media is one big stage.
Yes, it is.
One big stage, and you're always on, and you're covered by this veil on social media that I see this happen a lot, where everything's either amazingly great or amazingly bad. There's never an in-between. So when you lift up that veil to show people, you know what, it's 3 a.m., my hair's messed up, I'm wearing a wife beater and a hoodie, and I'm here grinding, and I'm creating content because I want the whole world to see it, and I'm trying to elevate my game. That is what is relatable to your point, and that's the transparency that I think a lot of folks are lacking, because again, it goes back to what you've said throughout this entire interview, which is questioning your self-worth.
So that's interesting that you say that. When I think of my own social media channels, I think of Facebook as the place where I push long-form content and deeper opinions. Twitter is the place where I put short-term content, tweetables, my own lines, content from the business, people that I follow, and it's a place for me to have real-time engagement. LinkedIn is there because apparently I'm supposed to have it.
It's a Rolodex.
It's a Rolodex. But Snapchat is where you get unfiltered Audrey. And the running joke is that I'm like the princess in the office. I always wear dresses, my hair is always done, my eyebrows are always on, my lashes are on, my nails are long, right? Nails done, hair done, everything did. That's me constantly. Snapchat is the place where I have the white clay mask on at night, and I'm always in the same sweats, and I sit there and I have what I call my nighttime rundowns, where I sit and I put on the filters and the funny voice, the voice changers, and I tell people about my day and my thoughts and my bad date that I went on, or wondering if I'm dating the right person, if things that went right in the business, things that went bad, places where I feel alone or I feel connected. And you're right, that is 100% the place
it's your
to
sanctuary.
be relatable. And that's not to say I don't get content from people that are like, oh, I'm so sick of you with the mud mask. I like you better with makeup on. Great, unfollow me. It's cool.
And let me tell you what happens though. Because Snapchat, when I joined in 2013, became my sanctuary, if you will, where I would go to be myself. Because I feel that, again, we're always on, especially in this business environment, we're always creating content. We're always putting out our best foot forward, because there's this, again, we're always on stage. So there's this business audience out there. You don't want to say the wrong thing or put the wrong photo, and someone's going to say, I don't know about doing business with them. The problem that I've encountered is, since over the last 2 years, I've done so much public speaking on Snapchat. I literally will go from a stage to jumping off stage and have 100 new followers on Snapchat. And now the mindset changes of, maybe I shouldn't snap while laying in my bed at 2 a.m. talking about what I did today, because it's going to give off the wrong perception.
So I can only say that you need to do what feels right for you. And if people don't like me at 2 in the morning with my bad hair telling them about my day, then they don't have to follow it. I don't put out in any context things that I haven't already made up my mind about, right? I don't sit there and ponder, am I dating the right person on Snapchat without having decided I'm dating the wrong person, right? Typically but what I will share is my insights as to how I got to this process, or what is the process I'm going through. It's storytelling. It is an authentic version. It all is. It's all just a form of storytelling, right? I think you can't get stuck on how will this be perceived, because then, again, you're hustling for other people to believe how worthy you are. You're giving the power of assigning your worth away to somebody else. And that's impossible. The only person who can ever assign how worthy you are is you. So anytime that you find yourself thinking, how are people going to receive this? How is this going to come out? If you're thinking about that, you're hustling to get other people's approval, not yours. And that is a real talk self-check, and ask yourself in all things, in the things you say and the things you do, is this truly for me, or is it to get recognition from somebody else?
I often say get people buy into the journey. Get people to buy into your story, because at the end of the day, since the beginning of time, business has always been predicated not on social media or on marketing. It's been predicated on doing business with who you feel comfortable doing business with. And if people can relate to you on a personal level, or if you open yourself up and become more of a human than a sales professional or as a guru in your field, what you'll see is you're going to start having a lot more success in your relationships all around the board, because people, again, relate to other people. And not everyone relates to seeing a Maserati or Ferrari on Instagram. What they relate more to is seeing the hustle at 2 a.m. and 3 a.m., because that's real. That's what you have to put into get to the outcome. And a lot of folks, I think, are just going straight to the outcome. I want to show you the outcome. I want to show you how successful I am. I don't want to show you everything it took to get there.
Yeah. So recommendations for people, if you don't know, read Simon Sinek's Start With Why, and he will very clearly tell you people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, talking about the journey. The second book that I recommend is, and second author, also viral TED speaker, Brené Brown. Read all of her books, but her best book, in my opinion, or her best two, are Daring Greatly and Rising Strong, which very much talk about the psychology behind why people only put out the good stuff. And the reality is, when you look at the psyche and the human condition, we don't bond in good times. We only ever bond in bad times. Think about a time when you've had a breakup, and your best friends also had a breakup, and suddenly you're the best of friends. Or even that person wasn't your best friend, but now you have something common to commiserate it with.
Right.
There's no irony in the fact that people use the phrase misery loves company,
Yes.
right? It's releasing hormones, it's allowing for you to bond. And here's what it comes down to. Again, back to self-worth and worthy women and everything in the world. We are only always ever seeking to be recognized and loved and accepted. The fact that I'm hurt in this situation and you're hurt means that my experience is now valid. You have validated me because you also feel the same way. Therefore, it's not me, it's the situation. So we are only always ever seeking oneness.
You were dropping it like it's hot, girl. As we look to wrap up, I want to ask you a question, a little bit personal of a question, if you don't mind. So how does a successful and busy entrepreneur such as yourself find time to date?
Oh, well, that's a special story. So I'm going to say this way, and I learned this from reading Ryan Holiday's book, Ego is the Enemy, but also I think I'd pretty much identified that. That which drives me is also the thing that holds me back. So my motivation to go out, to achieve, to work hard, to feel like I'm loving what I'm doing, right? And I want to put my everything into it is the same thing that keeps me from creating space and time for personal relationships when it comes to my romantic life, right? And so I have to recognize that. I don't think there is really such thing as a work-life balance. I think sometimes it's life, sometimes it's work. It all, in the end, balances out typically, but it's never always a perfect balance. And I think really it comes down to choice, right? It comes down to choosing what is it that I truly want now, and what am I willing to sacrifice for it to get that. And I don't like to think of things as sacrificing. I don't think I'm giving up because I'm not dating, right? I feel like I'm gaining because I'm having such rich experiences. In my professional life, in my friendships. And here's the other thing that I've also started to do, and I really recommend to people. I just turned 30, right? And let me tell you what happens when you turn 30. You get two classes of people, three, excuse me. You have your friends that got married young and are getting divorced because they've changed and evolved as people and they're no longer relatable to their high school sweetheart or the early circumstances in which they got married. The second part is people who are what I call the eternal bachelor, bachelorettes, who are like, psh, marriage, not for me, no way, I'm gonna party, and just like go through life, and I just want to be alone because I love what I do, but I'm going to have fun along the way. And then the third part that you get are people that are stuck in this, it needs to look like this. So when you turn 30 and as a female, well, let me tell you how many friends that you're at where you're like, how soon is this ring getting on my finger? I only have X amount of time, right? That thought of the biological clock really does start to tick, and you wonder like, well, if I meet somebody now and we date for a year and we get engaged in a year and then we enjoy the marriage for a year, that's 33. By the time I get pregnant, I could be 33 and a half. It's 10-month gestational period, that's 40 weeks. I'll be 34. If I want a second kid, that's 36. That's really pushing me closer and closer to 40, right? And you think of that mindset. Here's my advice to people. Make your romantic relationships more friendly and your friendly relationships more romantic, right? Don't put the pressure on. When you put the pressure on, it all goes to, right?
Hell in a handbasket.
It really does. And I sit there and I do both in my professional relationships and my personal relationships, and I very much adopted this motto of things unfold as they're supposed to. And if I enjoy it and I feel that there's value here, I'm gonna work really hard to cultivate a deeper relationship, whether that's the person I'm dating, the person I'm having coffee with, or the person I'm doing business with. And when you apply that approach to your lifestyle as a whole, things always just work out. And we talked about keeping yourself balanced earlier. For me, having faith in that truly is what keeps me grounded, and knowing, and I say this even in business, today might not be your time, but your time is coming.
Yes.
And in fact, there is a quote, gosh, I'm trying to think where I read this. It was either Yogi Bhajan's 5 Sutras for the Aquarian Age or a Marianne Williamson book. And basically the sum of it is, and I'm gonna paraphrase here, those who are certain of the outcome can afford to wait and wait without uncertainty. You know it's coming, so you're not worried about the timeline in which it comes. You just let it unfold in the way it's supposed to. And final thought I'll give you. When I look at my entrepreneurial journey, every time I tried to force something, it all went to every single time. I thought it had to look this way, I needed that client, I needed it to be like this, and it blew up in my face. Well, not overthought it. I put pressure to force it into a box. And every time that I let things naturally evolve and I continue to follow the path of, I see value in this, therefore I'm going to cultivate this, or this has resonance and it has value to me and other people, so I'm going to cultivate that. When I let things organically unfold, they always just work.
Right. Let things happen in the way and manner that they're supposed to happen, and don't force it.
Absolutely.
Audrey, I could sit here and chat with you for another hour.
Same.
But we're going to go ahead and wrap up. So where can the viewers follow you? Most importantly, where can they learn more about Worthy Women and support all the amazing things that you're doing?
Absolutely. So I can be found at audreybellis.com and at Audrey Bellis on Instagram and Twitter, Audrey R. Bellis, if you're on Snapchat. And then Worthy Women's Worthy Women LLC across all handles and worthywomen.co, but you can click through that through my website as well.
Audrey, thank you so much for joining me here on Real Talk.
Thank you
This
for
has
having me.
been amazing. So thank you. That's a wrap. Thank you so much for watching another episode of Real Talk. Make sure that you add my homegirl, Audrey Bellis, everywhere on social media. And be sure to check out Worthy Women. And if you are in one of the 6 cities where Worthy Women's going to be in 2017, or if you can get to one of those cities, make sure that you do it. Until next time, guys, be sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on any of the future Real Talk episodes or any of the content that I'm pushing out on this channel. All right, guys, I'll see you next time. Peace.